All right, we continue on in We Agnostics, page 47 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When, therefore, we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God, as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth, but if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven amongst us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. So I'm going to pause right there and we're going to talk about those first two paragraphs. So in this page at the top, I have God, we mean your own conception of God underlined. And in the corner, I have me in quotation marks. And then I have written underneath, all the different things that people have called me, because we can take God and make it vast and roomy, right? So if we think of it as an umbrella, God is the point, but there's all those other terms we can use for it that we've discussed up until this point. Then I have that second paragraph pretty much all highlighted, underlined, starred, crisscrossed, circled, and there's a big, huge star that has another one of my stop, fail. This is where I stop when I'm reading this with any of my sponsees and we hammer home this point. This is step 2. So it reads, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power, capital P, greater than myself? So we can't go past this point if we don't have that cornerstone set in place. So this is why we're going to stop here and discuss. So who would like to go first? Dottie.
Hi everybody, Dottie Alcoholic. So of course I have the same things underlined Kim does up in the top paragraph. But in that second paragraph, it points out that, I have, do I believe or am I even willing to believe? And that's how the atheist speaks, right? That's how the atheist thinks. And then that there is a power greater than myself. And that's the agnostic, right? The atheist just doesn't believe, and the agnostic, is looking for the knowledge of, like, I believe in God, but there's that but. And, it's just, then in that same paragraph it has, we empathetically assure him that he is on his pathway. And that's a promise. That's one of the promises that comes throughout this book. And there's so many promises that are written in here. And my phone is, and it's amazing. Like, I believed, and when I came in, I think I was more of that agnostic because I was so angry and mad at my God. But, I just want to point out that there's that asterisk again. It's the third time it's mentioned within the first 47 pages that we really need to read Appendix 2 in the spiritual experience. And that's all I have on this right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Dottie. All right, Bev.
Hey, good morning, afternoon, everybody. Bev, grateful, recovered alcoholic. I had the same stuff underlined, and also that entire second paragraph marked, and that's also a place where I stop in this book. Do I believe, or am I willing to believe? So you don't have to believe yet. And I do just want to point out that the definition of an agnostic is that they cannot prove there is a God. So it's not that they don't believe, but it can't be proven to them. Okay? So if we're willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself, then as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, now this next part's really important. We emphatically ensure him. And if you look up emphatically, it says in a forceful way. This is an absolute. This is with no doubt very clear. So we let them know that if they're just willing to believe, then let's move forward. And there was one more thing I wanted to say, but of course it went out of my head. I can't think of it, so I'll have to let it go, and maybe I'll talk later. But yes, that whole thing is we make sure that part is, and then there's another coming up in a page or two, another big section that has to do with that whole belief. But what I tell my sponsees, I know what it was. What I tell my sponsees at this point is, look around you. Look at the flowers. Look at the trees. Look at the wind, the mountains, the clouds, the sky. I didn't make that. You didn't make that. Where did all that come from? It had to be a power greater than me, because I did not have the power to do that. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Bev. Bonnie.
Hey, hi Kim. I'm Bonnie, alcoholic. Thank you. This is my first visit to this meeting. So thank you. I did raise my hand. I couldn't spot it for a minute, but I found it, so thank you. I really am struck about the words willing and believe and how many times they come up just in that paragraph, and how powerful and how positive those words are. I think I like that connotation of being just willing at least, but that is a positive mindset, and the same thing with believe. And then it further goes on and talks about it being the cornerstone. And I just think the whole thing to me is just really positive. And it's action, it's all about action and positivity, which I really appreciate. So, hey, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, only 3 people want to share on these 2 paragraphs? No? Oh, Leslie does? Gotcha. I was like, huh?
Hi, I'm Leslie, alcoholic. I'm kind of find it difficult when people don't believe. I came from a strong belief of something, and that belief was God. Your beliefs change over time in your conception of what God is over years. And I mean, when I was 5 years old, I didn't have the same belief of God as I do now at my age of 60 almost. So to me, it's easy. A power greater than myself. Yeah, because when I'm as an alcoholic, I'm at my weakest. It's got that damn phone. Sorry, that was messaging me. So I kind of got thrown off my thought. So I'll talk later. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Leslie. For me, like Leslie was saying about, it's hard for people that don't believe. The only one that I've ever struggled with when I've encountered someone, because a lot of people have calamity, which leads them to not have faith in God. The one that I've struggled with is a wife or a mom who's lost a child. Those ones are really hard. So, best if you're listening at meetings and you ever hear someone share about that, make a note at the back of your head who it is, because you need to have that in your toolbox so you can refer if you ever get a prospect that, say, has lost a child and then does not believe in God. You can say, I heard someone at a meeting share about that and they believe in God, and you want to connect those people, because I don't have experience with it, but that's the only one where I've had a really hard time getting someone willing to believe, is if they've lost a child. And so it's good to have someone in your toolbox that has had the same experience. Megan.
Hi everybody, Megan, alcoholic. See, in this point, for my sponsees, I have them look up the definition of God, and just so they understand like what they're talking about. And the first definition is the creator and ruler of the universe and source of all moral authority, the supreme being. And the second definition is the superhuman being or spirit worshipped as having power over nature or human fortune, the deity. And now in parentheses, in both of those definitions, they have in Christianity and other monotheistic religions. And then the second one they have in other religions. And I said, just take those parentheses out. Don't even put the religion aspect in it if that's not like flowing for you. Just focus on the definition, and what would you have that be? And what's your conception? So you don't have to follow anybody else. And this is where I love this program, because instead of listening to other people teach me about God, I was able to have my own interpretation of a higher power and my own interpretation of God, and actually listen how I feel that God is, instead of having other people's belief of God pushed on me. And that was, I believe, my huge struggle when I was younger, was having that belief of other people pushed on me, the punishing God. That was the Catholic religion that was always pushed on me. And I don't when I read this has actually taken me on a journey into the Bible. I've done Bible studies, and I don't interpret it that way. There were many people and prophets in the Bible who had, strayed away from God numerous times. But no matter how many times they did, he always forgave them and showed himself that, he's forgiving. So I don't know where they get this, interpretation of punishing God, because from what I see, from what I read, it doesn't seem that way at all. So to me, that was other people's interpretation being pushed onto me. And it's seeing it as I'm growing through this process is and that's just my, and I look at all different beliefs. I my golden rule, the golden rule in most religion is treat other people how you want to be treated. And, God is mostly love. And that's usually how it's reciprocated. So, I give them ideas, and I have them at this point, I give them an exercise, and what would you want your God to be? And write down all God's character traits that you would want him to be. And I said, and this is not something that's done next week. This is something that's going to happen over your whole period of sobriety. You're going to get all these different characteristics. And so it's just something to start, and then it's not something to me we ever finished. But that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Megan. Suzanne in Vancouver. You gotta hit your button.
So,
there you go.
I'm good?
Yeah.
Hi. I went to Catholic school in Calgary while I was living with my father. Sorry, Suzanne, alcoholic. And my Catholic school was very interesting. And we would go to church and pray and da-da-da. And then when we went home, my stepmother, who was a raging alcoholic, would beat the shit out of us. Naked whipping of her children. And I witnessed all this. I also received it. And that was my view of religion and church. And when I went back, I left there after raising hell and calling the police and everything. I went home to the Okanagan, and that was grade 9. And I met a Mormon girl, and she I felt so safe with her because she was Christian and she was all love, and she was her faith. I watched her family and how functional everyone was, and I wanted what she had. But I didn't want the rules that went with the religion. No drinking was off the table. That wasn't even a concept for me. No coffee? Sorry, I can't live like that. But her dad wrote me a letter that when I joined AA, she shared with me 30 years later. And that man, he loved me. Her father was a preacher. And they just kept throwing love on me. And they send me devotionals now that I'm willing. And I'm telling you, I was the agnostic show me science, show me that God exists scientifically, and I'll believe. But my sponsor was really great. It was smoke and mirrors. And she kept me in step one for a long, long time because I don't think I was willing to be willing. And she just kept saying, are you willing? Yeah. Okay. Then we went on. And, when I got on my knees and prayed and I asked for the craving to be removed, for the absolute complete obsession with alcohol to be removed, and the next day it was gone, that wasn't a coincidence. And when I hit my first year and I ran into a lot of trouble emotionally, I wasn't drinking, but I knew where to go. I knew to go to God. And I didn't know how, because in my Catholic upbringing, I only memorized prayers. And so I took a course. To learn how to pray and to dig deeper with God. And, I really love that we are following this big book, page 47. Everything that is written here is in my big book. And we're on the right path. We're listening to the right people. And I think that the whole idea of the step 5 of confession and amends, it's all good, just being a good human, being a good, loving person. And so, believe it or not, I got off of the first Zoom meeting. I went on to a prayer group with teachers in my school. A prayer group. Tell me that that's not an accident. God put me in my high school between a preacher's wife and a Christian, and we pray for kids at school every Friday morning. So I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be deepening my understanding of what my higher power is. And you can call him whatever you like, because it's all the same thing. So I love you guys. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much. Let's jump below you in the next square, Vanessa. You gotta hit your button. Yeah, there you go.
I'm Vanessa. I'm an alcoholic. I was going to say something that Megan had said, about writing down what my higher power means to me and what exactly it is, so I can start from there. And I did have some struggle with it. I believed in a higher power, but I wouldn't use the word God until after I relapsed. After my relapse, I had to make some changes to my program, and I did find that I think I had a resentment towards God, or using, and I know that because I wouldn't use the word God until after the Simple Cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure was built. And that was, I haven't lost a child, but I did have my mother pass away in my home, but at a young age. She was at a young age in an accident, and I thought that God didn't answer my prayers because that day I had run up to the front of my house when the EMTs were there and everything, and I was screaming to God, please God, don't take my mom. Please God, don't do this. So I came in with a resentment towards that, thinking that God had never answered my prayers. But where that changed was the day that I realized, after having had no spiritual upbringing whatsoever, we didn't go to church, that day it was actually an instinct for me to cry out to God. Like, where did that come from? And that prayer is an instinct that is already built inside of me. It was never taught to me. So at my one time of need, God did appear because I was talking to him that day, right? So that changed completely the direction that my recovery was going, and I've been able to build a structure on that since I had realized that. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Heidi G.
Hi, Heidi, alcoholic. I just kind of on the same lines as Melissa and where writing those characteristics of God with my regard to my own experience, which was fairly recent with that, I'd heard that in meetings, people having done that, and it's been and I thought it was a really cute exercise, for people that didn't have any sort of God or hadn't really been raised with that. And I think in the back of my head, I just always felt like I was raised with a God, and so I knew God. And my own experience with that, my sponsor actually had me do it just a few weeks ago because she was kind of realizing that I had this like blanket idea of God as I was talking, and so she's like had me write things down. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. It was really one of the most eye-opening experiences because for the first time ever, God became something that was right there with me. And as I started writing down even little things like, sunshine or fresh water, like there was just all these things. It didn't matter. She said, it doesn't matter. Nothing's right or wrong. It's what you think. And as I started reading it, there was just this real emotional like connection to a God of my understanding. And it was like the shell of the God that I had been taught really started to break away, and this real thing was before me. So I think that it's really a good exercise even for people that feel like they do know a God that they've been taught all their lives. So that's all.
Thank you, Heidi. Leslie B., did you remember what you were going to say?
Yeah. Oh, Leslie again from Alcoholic. I have my distraction there with my brother in the hospital, so that was that. But the one thing that I remembered is that it's a personal relationship with God that you have to remember, that you have to consider. And the thing that I underlined here, at the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. So that's the first thing that we needed. Afterwards, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of our reach. That was growth. But if we wish to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So I'm thinking that, like, that's my thought, is that everybody needs to start somewhere. And for people who've come into AA for whatever reason, we may have been Buddhists, Christians, whatever religion that we may have been or may have followed, we may have had some understanding of what God was, our conception of God. So that was your starting point. To me, the rest is now is getting to know who God is and how He has changed your life and to be a part of your life, to give it over to Him, to let go and let God, and to stay focused on that. So, like, for me, when I was younger, it was like, oh God, help me, and it was just like these. He heard that prayer. Of course he did. It didn't happen that day. It didn't happen that minute. It happened years later. I went through a lot of hell. And then when you get through that hell, you appreciate that God of your understanding, that he was there all along, guiding you along slowly, gently, like a father does to his children. The father doesn't come and grab you by the scruff of the neck, say, come on this way to the park. No, gently guiding you along, tenderly. And that's my vision of God, my understanding of Him. And then to have a personal relationship with Him where He cares about all of your needs. So, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? There are scientists all over the world. I mean, very learned men that will say to themselves, wow, this God idea, it's a very real possibility. It's not rocket science. It's another dimension. It's a spiritual dimension. It's if you allow yourself to believe, then the possibility of getting to know him in a greater way it just becomes clearer every day. And it's not to say that you're not going to have a hard time with it, because there's a lot of things in this world that's going to keep you from God and keep you from the life that he wants for you, that he wants you to be a star student, right? And that's what this is it's a learning experience, and it's life. I'm sorry I'm distracted here with that damn phone. I should turn it off. That's all I got to say right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. Flo.
Hi, I'm Flo. I'm an alcoholic. I just wanted to say that when I came in, I was willing to believe in something, but I wasn't going to believe in the theological God that I was raised with. And one night I went to a meeting and there was a speaker, and he said, one alcoholic sharing with another. 1 and 1 is 2. That's power greater than yourself. So to start with, I just used the people in the rooms that had something I wanted. They were happy, they were comfortable in their skin, and I wanted those things. And so I tried to follow their suggestions. And that was the beginning of my journey to a higher power, and it's changed over the years, but that was my jumping off point. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Flo. Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm an alcoholic. When I first came into this program, I had a very typical, immature concept of God. This personal being that is gonna, direct my life, give me what I asked for. If I did this, I'd get that. A lot of bargaining. If I do this, then I'll get that. If you allow this to happen, I promise I'll do this. And obviously that was not working really well. I like where it says that we used our own conception, however limited it was. And that's, as I came into this program, I had a belief, but I didn't spend much time on what that was. I believed that there was a God, but what that relationship was, I didn't give a lot of time to. And through the years in the program, I've had to. I think the concept of God's a mystery. I just see it as a mystery. I now know nobody can define God. It is what one experiences or thinks about it. No one has an answer or definition, which I think only limits this ground of being. I think problems arise when you're talking about how sad it is when there's someone you encounter that needs your help, and they've lost a close loved one or a child. And I think the problems arise when and I hear this a lot, when they believe in a God that interferes directly in our lives. So they think God took their children, or they took that loved one, or that God is giving us cancer to teach us a lesson. I hear this a lot. And then what happens, people get so angry that they turn off all connection with this God, and that often leads to relapse because they see it hopeless. Then what's the sense? So I think that, if we can just work with people and work with ourselves, thinking that, our faith gives us the strength when we ask for it. It gives us inspiration to do the right things. I think sometimes it opens our eyes so that when people come into our lives that can be of a great benefit to us, we see it, we make those connections, we're willing to do it. That's where I think willingness in this program is so important because it goes with faith. You know, if we believe that in some way there's some guidance in our life, if we don't have the willingness to open our eyes, we don't see it. And I think that's a detriment. So, you know, I do, you know, I have problems when God is limited to a male image or a father image. I just think it limits what God can be. And even people who talk about God in terms of generalities and a great spirit will also go back to calling him. And it's just a personal thing. It's because it's limited for me. So I just have to think of it more as something that is in all of us, that when we're together, even on a meeting like this, just being with all of you is a God moment for me. And, you know, it's marvelous the people who will share their thoughts, or someone like, you know, you, Kimberly, who was willing to put yourself out to, you know, to host this meeting. They're all inspired things, and I see God in all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Joanne.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanne. I'm an alcoholic addict. And so for me, I had no power over alcohol. I was powerless over alcohol. Like different vain attempts to control it. I was addicted to it. So I had to be willing to believe that there is some power greater than booze and drugs. I had to believe that, because if I didn't choose to believe that, then I was alone. I was alone, and I knew that I would turn to the power of drugs and alcohol, not to keep living my life. But to believe in a power that is greater, that can help me. If I can't ask for help if I don't believe in it. So I've been willing to believe that there is a power that is greater than my unmanageability of my addiction, to help me not put the bottle to my mouth, not put the pills in my hand to my mouth. That if I ask for that, then it's stronger than the addiction, and it's stronger than the alcoholism. I had an interesting revelation this morning. I was thinking about this meeting and talking about power. That I'm in New Hampshire, and in about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, the sun is going to set. And where Kimberly is, it's not going to set. That there is a big world that I can't control, that is making us all on this planet, that is making us, live our lives in our different, states and everything. And that there is a power greater than ourselves that are helping us all stay sober today. And for that, I am grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Emily Kelowna.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm an alcoholic. This is my first time at this meeting, and it's quite interesting. So thank you for those that are hosting it. When I first came into this program, I did have a belief in God, but what's interesting about my story was when I grew up in a Catholic religion, and I learned from a very early age that I didn't have to be on my knees and do the sign of the cross and do my prayers that way. I just decided to do it my way, which was I would climb into my bed and I would just pray and I would just talk to God. So, I love to be able to have the opportunity to share that with sponsees, that it doesn't have to be that religion that you were brought up in. I remember the first time I went to a different kind of church, Christian church, and all these people were happy. You know, they were happy and they were singing, and it was just like, this is what I want. um, so for me, you know, I've had a lot of spiritual experiences in my life when I've really called out to God. One was when my son was diagnosed with autism, and it just crushed my whole world. And, you know, I just remember feeling like, you know, this isn't my son and I can't go on. And I remember shortly after that, hearing the term, God doesn't give you any more than you can handle. And, you know, that was sort of my lifeline. And, you know, I've had many experiences, little experiences like that where I've connected the dots. And I like to share those things with sponsees. But a really interesting story was I had this one sponsee who was really struggling. She had done something on the job and was in really a lot of fear. And so we had this woman come to our meeting here in West Kelowna, and she came from the States, and she spoke exactly about how she overcame a similar issue. And I looked at my sponsee after when we went for coffee, and I was like, it's almost like she was meant to be there to share that story, to give you hope that everything. And so what's interesting is right after that happened, her situation that she had been waiting for a year to come to some sort of resolution finally came, and she knew how to deal with it. So, you know, I think it's really cool when we go to meetings also that, you know, the things that we struggle with, all of a sudden we go to a meeting and somebody will share on it. And it's almost like, you know, that's, you know, if we connect those dots, yeah. And so, you know, the other thing that I learned for sponsees that really struggle is, you know, do you believe that I believe? You know, if you've done a good job of showing them how your life has been transformed as a result of this program, you know, they want what you have, right? So, you know, even if that's a start, you know, that's good. Like this whole fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and all of these people that have had their lives transformed as a result of it, you know, just I keep reminding them that, you know, think of that. But yeah, no, I love how it also talks about, you know, the simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. You know, step 2 is just believing. You know, that's not the same as faith. Faith comes after. Faith comes with, you know, connecting those dots. And yeah, anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. All right, Darnita. You got to hit your unmute on your side.
Get to.
There you go.
All right. Hi, my name is Star. I'm an alcoholic. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Growing up as a kid, of course, you know, my mama made me go to church. And I'd always said when I got grown, I would never go back to church. And for one thing, I never believed in God because I couldn't see him. I felt like that up until 2017. I had just turned 20 years, got 20 years sober. And I take depressant medicine, and I told my psychiatrist it wasn't working, so he gave me a booster. And I noticed after I started taking it, and this does have to do with a guy though, but I couldn't go to sleep. So one Sunday, my mom was at church, and the church is like 4 blocks from the house. I walked to church, scared her, made her say shit in church, but I kept going and I kept going. And I'm surprised because I'm not a morning person, and I didn't like church because I didn't believe. But that was October. My mother had a heart attack. They did the first valve, and I mean, good. She came out great. November, they did it. She had a blood clot. It busted and went to her head and killed. That shit fucked me up. But I was still going to church. I never blamed God. But after, like a funeral and stuff, I thought, he knew my mother was going to pass, and he was getting me ready for that. because I was doing the meetings, but that wasn't gonna be enough. So he had got me to going to church, and I truly, honestly believe that if I wasn't going to church, I would have drank. 82, I was on the back of a pickup truck in Louisiana, and an 18-wheeler hit us, and my arm got like stuck in between the wheels, like it had stopped in my head. Well, I ran my cousin over at the front of the wheel, the back is stopped in my head. But when my cousin pulled my arm out, it took all my meat off. So now my arm looked like I've been burnt. Now, when I would go to stores and stuff, people always ask me, how you got burnt? I was like, I didn't. I got run over by an 18-wheeler. And they're like, oh, I know you thank God every day and every day. And I give them a slight smile because I did. I felt I was lucky. I didn't start believing that it was him until, like I say, 2017 when I started back going to church. That's the first time I almost died. I almost died. I started going to meetings with my sponsor. I know people don't believe it, but my sponsor put a voodoo on me and I damn near went crazy, but I got through that. 2015, my life was shit. I was losing everything. Kept everything when I was drinking, but I fucking losing everything when I stopped. I drank some antifreeze on the 9/11 is my sobriety birthday. On my 18th birthday, I tried to commit suicide. I didn't die. But like I say, 2017, I'm thinking of all this. I'm like, he saved me them 3 times. It wasn't just luck. It was him. And I truly believe that I'm just grateful to be here. I keep.
Thank you, Star. Thank you, Star. Absolutely. And I totally understand what you mean about God prepared you for that when your mom died. I had the same situation when my kid's dad died, my husband died. You know, had I not been working and programmed and actively involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't have been prepared for that day. And so God does, he prepares us for these things so that we can get through them. Janice.
Do I have to unmute?
Oh, no, you were good. Do it again. There you go. Well, one more time. There.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks. Hi, ladies. I'm Janice. I'm an alcoholic.
Oh, whoever's in your room there needs to turn their volume off.
Okay.
There you go.
You got it?
Yep.
I'm getting it.
Wow. Sorry.
Okay. Get whoever's in your room to mute their or turn their volume off, and then I'll come back to you. Gloriana. Gloriana.
Hello?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, how are you, everybody? I'm in God's church. I'm in nature. And every time, and listening to all the beautiful stories that everybody's sharing, you know, it brings up the idea of, what, people often say, well, God brought me to AA and AA brought me to God. And one of the most fascinating things that I learned from a sponsor of mine, and a very important lesson, she said, you have to really examine how you're petitioning God, because I kept doing the God box with, like a request, the hot 100 request, give me this, make my husband behave a certain way, make this happen, bring me money, things that had nothing to do with necessarily what God's plan was for me. And there's so much I wrote down. I just brought the big book up because it's going to rain any minute. I put it up on my porch, but I'm sitting in my nice chair away from my wind chimes because I don't want to distract. But thing is that, often, it's an interesting thing. One time I wrote a poem about the idea that when God's answer to a prayer is emphatically no, and it has to do a lot with letting go of that, letting go, letting God. Sometimes what we think, and this is our biggest issue, I'm talking about me anyway, my biggest issue initially with the God idea is that I wanted to control the direction of the prayers. I wanted to control the direction of people, places, things, situations. And often in lessons,
of life, of God's lessons for me, I learned much more powerful lessons. I learned humility. I learned acceptance. I learned how to flow spiritually with this plan that God has for me, because I think God has a plan for everyone. And one of the toughest things about losses, because I've had losses too. Oh my God, prior to my sobriety, I lost my mother, my father, my brother-in-law, all these people, my cousin, uncles, aunts. It was just like almost like a wave of losses. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm the queen of death. Don't talk to me. And that I got a lot of mileage out of when I was active. But the thing that happened is that I've learned that, had it not been for all these harsh experiences, I would have not come to the place I needed to come to. I think that I was so mired in defense mechanisms. I had I worked on the facade of keeping everything looking like it was normal, and it really wasn't. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the lessons that I see, and I'm grateful for the lessons I see through other people, because I've witnessed people lose children, and it's terrible. I've had a lot of program friends that had children that grew up and then got into their own problems with addiction and passed. I had a sponsee that lost a baby, and it was really tragic, very late term, and it was a very heavy thing. And she, even though she had other issues, she graciously went with the flow and accepted and moved on and got better. And if she could do it, I can do it. If they could do it, I've seen people with terminal illnesses they get through, people that go through disasters. So I don't know. I think the thing is that, we're given an act of divine providence every day when everything is fine and beautiful. But we have to also have our spirituality and our God sense in order to cope with what life throws at us. It may, today may be perfect and everything is wonderful. I guess we all want security, but I also find a great security at this point in my life in the grace of God and how and acceptance. To me, spirituality versus religion. I mean, religions. Everybody has their own channel, how they find God, and it's so emphasized in all of our big book. As we see Him, as we see Him, as we see Him, as we see Him. That's for a reason, because people, in my experience, I've seen people. My mother used to do a rosary, so she was very.
Okay, Gloriana, I'm going to have to cut you off because we are sticking to this page, love. Thank you.
Sure, okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, back to Janice. Janice, did you get your friend muted?
I think so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi again. Still Janice. Still Lord. I just wanted to share. I feel very blessed to have had my Catholic upbringing. But it was the kind of household, because my dad was actively drinking, and it was a lot of abuse, like was shared earlier, and we were like sent out of the house on Sunday mornings with change, and just go. It was more like a do what I say, not what I do. My parents would come to church like on maybe Christmas Eve, that kind of thing. But I never knew that you could not believe in God. I didn't know that was a possibility. It was like I grew up, there's God's there, and my grandmother used to tell us, who was born in Prince Edward Island, and she was my mom's alcoholic mother. So I loved her dearly. She used to let me have a beer after school in her little apartment next door. So she was my like buddy, and she would tell me, be kind to others like you would do upon others as you would have done unto you. And she would say, for every good deed, because I would always have questions. Why this? Why that? How does it, Evan and all that? And she had the most wonderful stories. And she would tell me, every time you do a good deed, you get a gold brick in heaven. And the people that are the best, you're gonna have the big, because we grew up like kind of poor. So it was, if you be really good, you're going to have the biggest mansion when you get to heaven. And that's how it was like given to me as a kid, that for every good deed you do, you're going to get another gold brick. And so every few days it was like, man, I got another gold brick, and and that kind of thing. So I believed in him as a kid, but then as the beatings got, as time went on, and somebody referenced that earlier, I would escape from the house, jump on my bike, because I was the oldest. I got for everybody else. You know, if anybody did anything wrong, where's Janice? How? You know, you're the oldest. You set the example. It's your fault. They're misbehaving. So whatever. And plus, he would beat my mom really bad. You know, and you know, at 10, 12 years old, you know, I would just hop on my bicycle and ride down to the beach and hide between the jetties, and my dad would be up on the boardwalk screaming, looking for me. I'd be so embarrassed. He'd be bombed, and I'd be like, pray to God, you know, please have my father stop beating up mom, you know, and it's, you know, looking back on it, and he just never answered my prayers. So I thought I already had such a low self-esteem. I had no chance, put it that way. By the time my father sobered up when I was 16, the damage had been done. I really believe that, wow, it must be true what my parents call me or say to me when they're mad, you know, like, you piece of this, you know, you're no good, you know. I mean, so I just thought God didn't like me, and he just never stopped believing that he was there. I just thought I was such a bad, rotten, something was really wrong with me that he wouldn't even answer my prayers. And then as I grew up, I never was against God, but it wasn't until I had that, like I think I shared, you know, a while back, when I had my first really big spiritual awakening. I mean, I had been in and out of the program for 17 years, and I would do the work that you needed to do to feel good about yourself, because I think a lot of it is all, you know, learning to love ourselves. I needed not just to get a belief in God, I needed to believe that God believed in me. And that's why I think when I had that spiritual awakening of just being filled with his love, and didn't know it until later, it was just the most amazing feeling of hope and wow, and just feeling all of a sudden like I stepped out of a bog, that I was, you know, I'm as good as everybody else. And it was just, I never felt that in my life, so I didn't even have words to describe it. But it was 34, so it's been 17 years trying to get to that point, from my first rehabilitation place, whatever. And you know, he gave me that wallop just to really let me know that he loved me, and that's what I needed to get my start. You know, I needed him to, you know, if it makes any sense, I needed to know that I was worth working on, you know, and then hence, you know, getting involved in the steps afterwards, and really incorporating, you know, the principles in my life. And today it's just, you know, I believe Jesus is my brother, and God is, you know, our father, and you're all my sisters and brothers. And, you know, it doesn't matter, everybody has their own thought of God, but I think, anyway, I'm just very lucky. I feel bad for people that have struggled, that come in, that don't, that, you know, because I don't know how anybody could do this without God. I mean, I just, you know, I'm at a point now where I'm on disability. I don't work, and I don't have you know, I don't have family local. I don't have children, you know. So basically, until we couldn't go to meetings anymore, that was my job, was just going AA and doing service, and, you know, and so, you know, I'm just really okay with all of this, because I so believe that God has me in the palm of his hand, and I just ask him every day to show me what, you know, help me to do what he'd like me to do, and say what he'd like me to say. And, you know, I don't take that for granted. He's like my invisible friend now. I didn't have an invisible friend as a kid, and now as an adult, I have my Jesus, and I squeeze my hand, and, you know, I got him. He's right there, you know. But I really feel blessed to have had, to have that today, because I really don't. I don't know how people that don't. I know, you know, I have no judgment against people. God bless them, but I don't know how you could do it without believing in, you know. And he's given me so many, like, signs, and I've had many spiritual awakenings and things that just, there's no way, there's no God. You know, like he's guided me right up until the point where I am right now, to the place where I am. And looking back, I can, anyway, thanks so much. And I just thank you, Kim. Thanks for everything.
Thank
and
you so
everybody
much,
have a wonderful
Janice.
weekend.
Thank you so much, Janice. All right, ladies. So we heard a lot of different conceptions of God, and we heard a lot of examples of prejudices against God today in our conversation. I want you to shift your thinking because we're smashing these prejudices. We want to release them. We want to let them go. Our whole point now is we are going to transition. So we want to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understand Him. We want to let go of these prejudices and be open and willing to believe in a power greater than ourselves. So this is your homework. Your homework is to not meditate on your conception of God or on your prejudices. We are going to let that first paragraph go. Your homework is to meditate and pray upon that second paragraph. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe in a power greater than myself? You do not define it. You do not have to be able to explain it. All we need to do is rid ourselves of the prejudice and be willing to believe or have that initial contact and belief. So that's your homework today. And then we are going to carry on. This is a vital step in our process because this is step 2. We need to be able to clear away those prejudices and move forward. So there's your homework. You have the whole weekend to do that. You don't need to find a conception. You don't need to deal with your prejudices. We just need to be willing. All right, ladies, thank you so much.